Are you ready to retire? Just saying yes doesn't mean you are. On today's show, we've got a few steps to take now to make sure you're really ready for retirement on today's episode of Elevate Your Wealth.
And now, Elevate Your Wealth with Mark Stimson and Casey Elkins.
Welcome into Elevate Your Wealth. Mark Stimson, Casey Elkins are your hosts. You can find them right here in Seattle. Elevated Financial Management, over 42 years combined experience between these two in the retirement planning business. They are fiduciaries helping hundreds of their clients get ready for the postseason, their retirement. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. We go back and forth on the topics each and every week. We also give you an opportunity, and it's a complimentary one, to get on the calendar with Elevated Financial Management, kind of see where you are in the retirement planning phase of your life. Have you started planning? Or maybe you're in the middle of something, need that second opinion? Stay tuned. We'll open up 10 appointments for the upcoming week, and you can meet with Mark Stimson, Casey Elkins, their entire team at Elevated Financial Management. Okay, guys, getting to retirement is easy enough. We're all headed there, right? Time marches on. We work for a long time. We save a bunch of money, hopefully, and then it's off to the golf course, maybe hang with the grandbabies, or maybe you're just going to relax. Well, you can do it all, but it does take planning. So we've got some steps to help you get there. We're going to go over as many as we can today. So, Mark, we will start with you, steps 1 and step 2. We'll start with determine your desired retirement lifestyle.
This is a big one. This is one that Casey and I really talk with our clients at length about, because the money's important, but there's so much more to this than just the money. One of the biggest things that comes up is, where are you going to retire? Where do you want to live? In fact, I'd like to share a quick story with a client that is moving down to Colombia. And when Rob first told me that, I thought, wow, okay, that's interesting. But what was cool about it, Rob had gone down there. He'd lived down there. He's got a wonderful setup already in place. He loves the medical, and he's going to live like a king down there for around $2,500 a month. Now, that's a big deal. And so, again, you want to find out, where do you want to put down roots for the last leg of our, life. And, it's our retirement journey. So that's important. Figure out what's going to align with what you want to do in your life. If you want to do a fair amount of traveling, you may want to consider maybe going into a condo. Be nothing wrong with that. A lot less maintenance, right? That's going to allow you to travel and not have to worry about the home near as so much as you would if you were in a single family type of home. What about maybe thinking about moving? I know we're in the Seattle area, but maybe you want to move farther out, maybe a smaller town. There's a lot of cool places in the United States that offer more of a small town feel, and life. It's more peaceful, more quiet than the hustle and bustle of a big city. But some people love that. So again, you need to figure out what you want to see happen. Something else you really want to think about doing is exploring maybe an area to live that has lower taxes and a cost of living. We know right now, one of my closest friends about 12, 13 years ago moved down to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and he cut his retirement expenses in half by leaving the Kent area of Washington and moving to New Mexico. So you want to give that a lot of thought, because we know in the Seattle area, it's very, very expensive to live here. So you're going to want to give some deep thought to that. But one of the things that we also recommend is maybe thinking about taking a gap year right after you retire, or a few months, to really begin to see what retirement is going to be like for you based on your lifestyle. You want to maybe start to do activities that you thought you might enjoy. We can't golf all week long. We know that's not going to be possible. So what would you like to do? Maybe you've got a hobby that you really want to pursue, or maybe you want to work part-time. You want to begin to look at that routine that you're going to have. What if your wife is continuing to work, but you've retired, or vice versa? That can cause some issues that need to be worked on and worked out. We know that for so many of our clients, their main social system is based on their work and their friends and who they spent the last 20, 30, 40 years with. And when that goes away, how do you replace that social network that you've wanted your whole or had your, I should say, your whole life? That is a big deal. You want to think about that big time. And then one other thing that we want to do is we got to take some proactive steps to stay busy, because I've seen some clients when they first retired and they got into this routine and they didn't plan it at all. They lost a lot of their close friends that went other directions or maybe continue to work. And they began to deal with a little bit of depression. So this is something we all want to think about, because, if you begin to, once you get retired and you start doing some meaningful activities, I mean, just look how much pickleball has taken off in the retirement world this last year, 2 years. It is a very fun game. So you want to begin to think about so many other things and where you want to put down roots than just, the money that you're going to need to retire.
So again, guys, I mean, having that plan, being ready for it, but the question you need to ask yourself, are you actually ready to retire? I mean, we're going over some steps that you can take to kind of see if you're ready to go. And you can do this well before your actual retirement date. Opportunity to get on the calendar with Elevated Financial Management ongoing during the course of this show. These are complimentary appointments. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. The number to call to slide in, grab one of those appointments, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Now's the perfect time to see if you're on track. Perfect time to get a second opinion. Again, 866-668-3625. So back to the steps. Casey, we're going to hit you with a couple. Retiring the debt. We'll start with that one. The high interest debt is absolutely a killer.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And that is actually something that keeps people from retiring sometimes. If you've got enough debt, that can cause you to have to put retirement off, simply because if you've got a finite amount of assets, right, ultimately you've got to be able to cover all your expenses month to month. And if the assets that you have aren't going to last the lifetime that we've got planned looking forward, and you've got this debt, that increases how much income you need on a monthly basis. And so eliminating that debt, retiring your debt when you retire, is really, really important. And it's something that most people are working towards. But sometimes we see folks that are a year or two from retirement that are still carrying quite a bit of debt. And although they've done a nice job saving, that debt has really been hurting them, especially, as you mentioned, Morgan, when it's high interest. That's something that is just a massive detriment. And I don't think people truly sit down and count that cost like they should. And this is where Mark and I talk about it all the time. This is where that second set of eyes, the second opinion, having somebody to help you look at that, that's not in your circumstance, but understands the situation that you're in, can help highlight some concerns. So you want to work towards being debt-free. Eliminating car payments, credit card debt, and even your mortgage if you can. For a lot of folks, that is a low interest rate, especially if we've done anything in the last few years or refinance or something like that. But if it's still a high dollar amount, again, the concept remains the same, that we have this high cost to deal with on a monthly basis. And so it increases the strain that we're going to put on our portfolio when we start taking income out. So you'll have more control if you can be debt free, and you can make adjustments throughout your retirement to actually spend that money on fun things that you've been waiting to do in retirement. And then I'll touch on this as well, reconsidering your risk profile. So this has got to be one of the biggest blind spots for folks. Yeah. People just miss this constantly. And we understand why. Here's the concept. If you're 40 years old or you've been contributing, I should say, to your 401k for 30, 40 years, you've gotten used to taking some level of risk with that. And very commonly, a fairly high level of risk, more than a lot of people realize. And that has actually worked out okay because you've had a long time horizon to deal with potential downturns in the market. It's when you're 5 to 10 years from retirement that those downturns will have an impact on the rest of your life. If you experience a bear market and you're invested aggressively, that will have a detriment to your overall retirement. So you want to start to consider shifting to potentially less aggressive, more conservative investments, having a more diversified portfolio, and trying to avoid substantial losses in the event of a bear market. Now, things have been going well. We've had ups and downs, but ultimately, we still need to stay protected because we don't know for sure what's coming next. It's time to have that conversation with somebody who can help point out those concerns.
Again, we're talking about just a few steps. There are a number of steps you can take right now to be better prepared for your retirement. And one step would be get an appointment with Elevated Financial Management. Mark, let's bring you in. We've got 10 appointments. What's going to happen for these 10 callers?
If you maybe worked at Boeing or Weyerhaeuser and you've saved $250,000 or more, please, as we just mentioned, maybe you're wondering what you need to do in retirement. Where do you want to live? Where's your income going to come from? Is it going to be guaranteed? What about your tax situation? Have you really looked at that hard and know exactly which bucket you need to draw money from and when? There's so much to coming down the mountain and setting up a great retirement plan. So please let our team of certified financial planners help you with that. All we want to do is have a conversation. Please leave your checkbook at home, but give us a call. Let us help you put together a plan that's going to make your retirement dreams a reality and not just a fairy tale.
I love the analogy of climbing the mountain. That's what you do when you're saving for retirement. And as Mark said, this is about when you come down. How are you going to handle the retirement planning part of this? You really need to plan it out. 866-668-3625. Again, we have 10 appointments. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. Call the number now, 866-668-3625 to grab one of those appointments. So the market, once again, showing signs of volatility. Now it's more important than ever to make sure your portfolio is protected. We are going to talk about that when we come back. Welcome back into Elevate Your Wealth. Your hosts, Mark Stimson and Casey Elkins. You can find them right here in Seattle at Elevated Financial Management, the power behind this program. Check them out online. It's a great resource website, efmnw.com. All letters, efmnw.com. Again, links to the TV show, radio show, and podcast forum. A lot to do there, plus contact information if you have any questions about where you are in your retirement planning process. Maybe you haven't started. Maybe you're in the middle of something. You desperately need a second opinion. They are here for you. 42 combined years of experience between Mark and Casey, helping hundreds of their clients get ready for retirement. They are fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate, so away we go. If you're in your late 50s, early 60s, you may look back on the steps that you take right now to protect that portfolio as some of the best moves you've ever made. So let's take a look at 3 of them. We'll try to get through all 3 of these that you can take to make sure the transition into retirement is a smooth one. Mark, we start with you. Creating the income now that you'll need it in retirement. Make sure you have it.
Yeah, you can't overstate that at all, Morgan. I say this at every show that we do, radio or television. It's about income, income, income. Because the 401k money, it's great to have a nice big fat 401k, but that thing can become skinny if we're not careful, right? And Casey just mentioned about our risk and how much we're taking later in life. So the critical thing that we share with every client is you have got to establish a nice base of guaranteed income. Our happiest clients are absolutely the ones that have at least two guaranteed sources of income. One would be Social Security, of course, and the second would be if you're fortunate enough to have a pension. The problem is most pensions have gone away. And so how do you replace that? Well, that may bring in the A word, right? The annuity world. But if you want to have income that is guaranteed forever, an annuity can absolutely do that. And it will guarantee that income for your lifetime, for your spouse's lifetime. And if there's any money left, it's going to be passed on to whoever you put as your beneficiaries, which in most cases is going to be our children. So we've got to be willing to acknowledge that Social Security, realistically, especially in this area, is absolutely not going to be enough. I just had a client that just came in last week, and she's facing the hard reality now that she's not really going to be able to pay all of her bills just on Social Security, which is all she had. She has a little bit saved up, $30-some thousand, but it's not near enough to create any other kind of income. So she's between a rock and a hard place. And realistically, what does that mean for her? She's probably going to keep on having to work. So you've got to figure out a way to close the gap between what is guaranteed from an income standpoint and what your bills are each and every month. You've got to get that figured out. Then you're going to want to reallocate assets that are maybe were set up for growth, like Casey mentioned. We took a little more risk on those. It's time to redesign your portfolio so that you can turn those into income generating assets. Okay. And you've got to start the reallocation process in advance to reduce your portfolio risk. And if you do that, what happens if 2008 or maybe 2000 happens again and you haven't done that reallocation? It could be devastating because now all your income could be cut in half or by 30%, 20%, whatever the downturn in the market is, it can be devastating to your portfolio. So you want to begin to harness the power of early income generation, because if you do that, it's absolutely going to enhance retirement income very efficiently. And that's going to bring us to our next point, Casey, and that's how do you manage the balance of your growth portfolio for protected growth? How do you do that?
Well, this is really key. We'll talk about how to do it, but I think it's also important to understand why we need to do it, right? And the point kind of ties back to something I was talking about earlier, which is simply that the investment approach that you have when you're 30 or 40 is not the appropriate investment approach when you're nearing retirement. Very commonly, and Mark, we do this all the time, right? We have folks that come in, they bring their statements with them, and we do a full analysis and we lay everything bare for them. And just looking at their investments, very commonly we look at those and we think this person's investing like they're 30 or 40 years old, right? Exactly. Like they've got 20 years before they retire. But in reality, they're 62 and they want to retire in 2 years or 3 years. And they're not invested in the right way to do it. And that's really key, because protecting the assets is the right way to invest for retirement. So there is a big distinction in how we invest. We have to acknowledge, and this is something that it's a mind shift change, it's a mental adjustment. You've got to acknowledge that a significant loss in your late 50s, in your early 60s, that has a more immediate impact on your retirement plans than it did, say it happened 10 or 15 years ago. Like 2008, right? Let's say you're getting close to retirement now. Let's say you're approaching 65 in 2023, 2024. And a few years ago in 2008, well, you still had 10 or 15 years before you retired, right? So
and the market came back.
And the market came back, and that was great. That's a good thing. We're not concerned about that aspect of it. But what if we had a 2008 now? What if you lost 40 to 50% of your portfolio now? That would be a big detriment, and that would delay your retirement. That would, at the minimum, make it so you could spend less in retirement if you lost that much of your portfolio. And so, managing the portfolio to protect against loss before focusing on growth, we have to make sure that we're protecting what we have and then trying to build from there. We can't be so focused on the growth that we end up leaving ourselves too exposed in the market. And we just have a limited time for recovery. And if we can avoid those downturns like we had in 2001 to 2008, those kinds of things, we have a higher potential for improved returns because we're not losing as much. So we don't need as much growth to make up what we lost. So it's really key to make sure we're investing the right way.
Guys, we just want to make sure our listeners understand, so important to have a plan in place and kind of have that roadmap to get you to and through retirement, considering all the different things that can impact you as you make your way to your retirement. So grab an appointment. They're complimentary. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, get an appointment right now. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Late 50s, early 60s. We're talking to this category right now just about how important it is to kind of get things in line and steps. Again, create that income. Start doing it right now and have it all managed. And then manage the balance and the growth in that portfolio, how much risk is in there. And then finally, Mark, the last one to you, and that's just you got to get busy here. You got to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah, this is one we can't overemphasize. You've got to take control of your own retirement. Casey does a really good job with a slide when we're going over risk. And we call it basically the rule of 5 to 10%. We want your losses. If we're going to have to absorb any losses, we want it to be no more than 5 to 10% of your portfolio. You can't afford a 20, 30, 40, 50% drop in your value if you're close to retirement, like Casey was just talking about, because it will devastate your income. Not only will you have to reduce it, but it's going to shorten dramatically the lifespan of those dollars. So you're going to run out of money a lot sooner. You've just got to realize that by taking some proactive steps, you can help to guard your portfolio. You put insurance on it. That's what we call it. It's really, you're insuring your retirement income. That's important. But you've got to do this if you want to have a responsible financial future. Because if you don't, it's not going to be what you had hoped and dreamed it would be. And this really brings us back to a very hard fact that we have to remember. We've got to realize this is our deal. This is our responsibility personally to take the bull by the horns. You got to stop blaming others. You got to stop listening to all the media and all the stuff all the noise out there, and take a personal responsibility and work with someone that can truly help you deal with your retirement and make it one that's real. And it ends up not being devastated because we didn't take the steps that we needed to protect our hard-earned life savings.
So important. And I love what you said there. Take the bull by the horns. Take charge. And that doesn't mean that you have to go out there and do it by yourself. Have a professional, have a team work with you, get you to and through retirement. The opportunity is now. We have 10 appointments with Elevated Financial Management. Casey, walk us through what's going to happen for these 10 callers.
Well, this is your opportunity to grab the bull by the horns. This is the opportunity for you to take control of your retirement by having a conversation with us, by getting a written financial plan put together by our team of certified financial planners. This is what they do every day. This is what we do every day to help folks get retired. So we're going to talk about taxes. How are taxes going to affect you? What can be done to lessen your taxes in retirement? We're currently in a tax window where we have got to grab the bull by the horns and take advantage of that opportunity. What about the risk that you're taking? Are you taking too much risk as you're approaching retirement? That's something that you need to know, and you've got to be willing to have that conversation. Don't hesitate. Pick up the phone. Give us a call now.
Opportunity. Here it is. Here's the number to grab one of the 10 appointments. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. Here it is. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. You've been thinking about getting into this retirement planning. Now's your opportunity. Or you're in the middle of something, but you're not being communicated with. You're frustrated. It is A-OK to go get a second opinion. Call the number now, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. When we return on Elevate Your Wealth, well, you know you want to minimize risk in retirement, but do you know the kinds of risks you need to be managing? It's all coming up next, right here. Elevate Your Wealth, hosted by Mark Stimson and Casey Elkins. You can find them at Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle. And between these two, 42 years combined experience in the retirement planning business. It's all about having that plan. They are certified financial fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. We go back and forth on the topics each and every week, and we're also here to help you. If you've got questions about your own retirement situation, maybe you've been sitting on the sidelines and you've been thinking about starting a planning process, but you just haven't done it, I've got great news. We have 10 appointments. They are open now, and they are complimentary. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. All you've got to do is call the number and secure one of those spots. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Or you need that second opinion. You're halfway down the path, but you're frustrated, not being communicated with. Grab one of the appointments. 866-668-3625. So most people don't realize just the number of risks that they're going to face in retirement. But we're not, going to rattle off the usual suspects just to scare you to death. We're going to bring these issues to your attention so you can sit down with an advisor and have these types of discussions about your portfolio, about your plan, or create that plan if you don't have one. So you need to be prepared for this. So let's talk about the main kinds of risks that our listeners should be aware of. And more importantly, how you're going to manage them. Casey, I'm just going to throw this big can of corn over the plate. Here it is. We'll start with market risk.
That market risk is a big deal. And I think everybody understands what this is, but really it's just the possibility to experience losses due to factors that affect the overall performance of the financial markets. So it's ups and downs in the markets. It's a red day or it's a green day, right? And so that market risk, specifically what we're talking about is those red days where it just looks like there's blood in the water. Things have gone horribly wrong market-wise. Whether we understand why or why not, that is not really the point here. The point is that red days do happen. There are down markets. There are bear markets. And that risk is something that we've got to understand. It's something that we need to be prepared for as we're moving to retirement. Again, it's about understanding what those risks are and figuring out ways to mitigate them. And so there are different things that you can do. What we find is that a lot of folks often look to the market to mitigate market risk. And what I mean by that is they look to hopefully buy stocks that are less volatile or maybe to diversify to bonds and those kinds of things. And not that that can't be helpful, but that doesn't mean that that's the only solution. And that market risk, again, it's something that does keep people from retiring when they want to, when things don't go the right way. As a matter of fact, over the last couple of years, there's been some turmoil in the markets. Things have been up and down. And we have seen a number of people delay their retirement because what they had invested, they've lost a fair amount of it, and they're no longer as confident in their retirement. And so folks have come to us with that information. And so it's something to be aware of. We want to make sure that we're doing what we can to understand the market risk and mitigate it. And then let me kind of rewind a little bit here. I said sometimes when folks are trying to lessen their market risk, they'll use bonds to do so. Here's the concern with bonds. We've had interest rate rises over the last couple years, and the rise in interest rates drives the value of bonds down. Now, my point here is this. If we're concerned about market risk, and so we lessen our market risk by purchasing bonds, we have unknowingly pulled in another risk into our portfolio called interest rate risk. So if interest rates continue to rise, the value of bonds that we own will go down. And so that is another risk that has to be mitigated. And we're not trying to paint this dark, gloomy picture, but we do want to make sure that people understand that there are these blind spots as folks move to retirement. And we want to know what they are so that we can start to address them. And so those fluctuations in interest rate can have a positive effect. If interest rates were to go down, that would have a positive effects on bonds that we own. But if they were to rise, that would have a negative effect. And so, again, we want to understand that and make sure that we're working towards an end goal and trying to mitigate those risks. A couple other ones, Mark, that I'll throw to you: inflation risk and longevity.
Yeah, these are to, I think the first one, Casey mentioned inflation risk. Boy, we're all feeling that right now. Every time you go to fill up your vehicle with gas, everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's amazing how bad it's gotten over the last year and a half, 2 years in that regard, let alone what we pay at the grocery store. Everybody knows, I think, deep down what inflation risk is. But I like to use a thing about if we go back in time when the Mustang came out in 1964. Ford introduced the Mustang, and you know what the starting sticker price was for a Mustang in '64?
I'm gonna guess 2,500.
2368. So can you imagine? Because the sticker price today, just starting out for a Mustang, is about 26,670. So think about that. And then if you go more top of the line, you could go into the low 70,000s, up in pushing $80,000. So again, look at what inflation has done to things over time. But I think to bring it more home is how much does your income have to increase to keep your same lifestyle based on inflation? Well, right now we know last year we were pushing double digits, and I believe in for most of us we were over 10%. But to give you an idea, at a 6% inflation rate, if you're living on $50,000 now, at 6%, you will need to have $100,000 worth of income to keep being able to buy the same amount of goods and services within 12 years. Think about that. Your income must double if it's 6% in 12 years. If it's 4%, about 18 years. So the point is, do you have a plan to address for that? Because it can be devastating if you do not.
And I think the other thing that I'll add to that, Mark, is sometimes we talk about that in the other way, right? It's interesting to think about how often income needs to double. But for those of you that are listening that don't have an income plan that increases your income in retirement, we could look at this the other way. Instead of, let's say right now you have $50,000 worth of income. At a 4% inflation rate in 18 years, if you do not have a plan that accounts for this, you will only have $25,000 worth of income. You'll be able to buy half of what you can currently buy today, which means that you either need to have an income plan that accounts for inflation, or you need to have a lifestyle plan that gets cut in half in 18 years. And I don't think anybody wants the second one.
Yeah, and that's why that takes us to longevity risk. Longevity risk, we call that the risk multiplier. In fact, I believe it's the one risk factor that never gets talked very much about, but I believe is the most important one to have a handle on. I have a recent article of a woman in her 90s now, and she thought she had a plan, but it's completely, her money is going to run out in 1 year, and she'll have only Social Security coming in. Now, she's fortunate. She's got her children that are going to help take care of her, but not everybody has children that's going to step up like that. So again, with longevity risk, you have the risk of long-term care needs go up dramatically because we live longer, right? The odds of living through possible another bear market, which we know happens every 5 to 6 years. How are you going to deal with another downturn in the market? Inflation, like we're seeing. The longer we live, we may go through 1 or 2 inflationary periods that are extremely high. Social Security, taxes, all of these things are part of longevity risk. And if you don't have a plan to address those, we're all going to be in a lot of trouble.
Tell you, it's all about managing it. It's all about planning for it, kind of looking into that crystal ball, if you will, and just understand that there are going to be some things coming your way, but you need to plan for those. The opportunity to get on the calendar with Elevated Financial Management, meet with Mark, Casey, their team, and talk about your situation. It's going on right now. We have 10 appointments available. They are complimentary. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. You can call and grab an appointment right now. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Back to the risks to be aware of. We've talked about market risk, interest rate risk, inflation risk, and Mark just handled longevity risk. It is a key one. Casey, we'll wrap it up with you. Currency risk, self-induced risk.
Yeah, currency risk. I think this is one that a lot of folks miss. And so, the exchange rate, right? That's another way to look at this is exchange rate risk. If we have a company that does business outside of the U.S., there's an exchange rate associated with dollars crossing those borders. And so that is a risk that folks have in their investments that they may not understand or may not have ever actually thought about. But if you've got investments in other companies that do business outside of the U.S., which a lot of publicly traded companies do, that is a risk that you might have to contend with, or something at least that can create volatility in some of those investments that maybe we don't readily understand on a day-to-day basis. But it is something to be aware of. But I really want to focus on this last one that you mentioned, Morgan, self-induced risk. Man, this is really big, and it's something that folks don't typically recognize of themselves, and it's making an emotional decision or letting their emotions dictate their actions when it comes to their investments, right? And that when somebody does that, when somebody makes that emotional decision, and maybe they see the market falling, and so they sell and move everything to cash, and then the market's doing good, and they buy back into really aggressive stocks, and they're kind of doing this whiplash thing back and forth. What that tells what that tells Mark is that somebody is not invested in a way that they're comfortable with. And so they're trying to get comfortable by buying and selling. And ultimately, that is not the best way to accomplish it. A plan is what's going to help solve that issue. So that self-induced risk is really something that becomes prevalent and something that needs to be addressed.
Okay, well, let's open it up. Mark, let's bring you in. We've got 10 appointments. Walk us through what's going to happen.
Yes, please. If you saved $250,000 or more, and maybe you've worked at Boeing, and you've been listening to us talk about these different risks, market risk, longevity risk, just not taking precautions to protect your portfolio, self-induced risk. If any of these things are ringing true with you, please pick up the phone. Let's have a conversation and let our team of certified financial planners put together a plan specifically for you, where we'll take a hard look at taxes. What's the best way to address those? What about your income? Do you have a solid plan for multiple sources of guaranteed income? Not maybe income. It needs to be guaranteed. What about health care? Have you thought about, well, should I go on Medicare when I turn 65? And if I do, then am I going to go on a Medicare supplement or a Med Advantage plan? And we haven't really even touched today the need for some estate planning. Should you use a will or should you use a trust? So please pick up the phone if any of these are concerns of yours. Let our team help you, and let's have a conversation. But please be assured you need to leave your checkbook at home.
All right, we got 10 appointments. Call now, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. 866-668-3625. When we return, we've got retirement scenarios. Don't go anywhere. Back on Elevate Your Wealth, hosted by Mark Stimson and Casey Elkins. You can find them right here in Seattle, Elevated Financial Management. Check them out online. It's a great resource website, EFMNW.com. All letters, EFMNW.com. Links to the TV show, radio shows, and podcast form. Great information on retirement. Check it out, EFMNW.com. Between Mark and Casey, 42 years combined experience in the retirement planning business. They are fiduciaries. It's all about helping get ready for retirement. There's an opportunity to get on their calendar, complimentary. That means leave the checkbook at home. Going on during the course of this show, if you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. The number to call to grab an appointment right now is 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Scenario time, fellas. So here we go. Casey, you're up first. Here's the scenario. My company offers a 401k and a Roth 401k. Currently, I contribute 6% to my 401k, 8% to my Roth 401k. Is this a good long-term strategy? I want to contribute all to my Roth starting in 2024. Is that a better strategy? And also, can I take out my principal, if needed, from my Roth 401k since it is after-tax dollars?
Well, I'll say this, Mark and I love Roth. That's our favorite. When we think about the three types of money, we've got tax deferred, we've got taxable, and we've got tax free. And so you tell me, which one would you rather have the most of? So if we can get more tax free, that's the best way to do it. However, there is a couple barriers of entry, right? It has got to be worth it right now. And what I mean by that is there's some details out of this scenario that would be helpful that we don't have. But if you're in a high income bracket already, let's say you're paying 30+% in taxes right now, well, contributing to a Roth right now, you're going to pay taxes on those dollars now. Now, you're not going to pay taxes on them later. You will pay them now, but you're going to pay them at that high tax bracket. So the big question is, are you going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement? That's something that we don't have the answer to until we have that conversation. So I can give it to you this way. If you're going to be in a lower tax bracket than you are now when you're in retirement, contributing to a Roth may not make a lot of sense at the moment. That doesn't mean that we would completely shy away from it, because there still is some possibility that if taxes went up enough in the future, that it could make sense to contribute to a Roth now. The other side of that coin is if we think we're going to be in a similar or the same tax bracket in retirement, of course, depending on what our income is, then it would make sense to contribute to the Roth now, because that's going to lessen our tax burden overall. So again, it's situational. You've got to dig into those details or have that conversation with somebody to understand what the true positive impact is for you. The more money in the Roth, the better, but it's got to be worth it, again, to my point. Now, can you take out the principal if needed from your Roth since it's after tax dollars? That's depending on your age. There's still a penalty if you're under 59 and a half and you take out the investment dollars, but the principal can come out without having to have that 5-year rule in place. So again, it's situational. And again, there's some details there that would need to be discussed. You want to add something to that, Mark?
Yeah, I just want to say what Casey was mentioning. One thing to keep in mind, we have a lot of clients that come in and they deep down want to believe they're going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retire. But what we see, that ends up not being the case, right, Case? And so you want to be very, very careful in that. That's why thinking that might get us all in trouble. I am with Casey 100%. We believe taxes are going up. If we can pay tax now at a known rate, why would you want to wait, kick the can down the road when that can's going to hit the wall, and then be looking at a much higher tax bracket or tax rate, not bracket, but which could put you into a higher bracket, right? So again, these are things that you really want to be contemplating and thinking deeply about, and not really guesstimating. Some of it's going to be an educated guess, but that's a lot better than a just wing it guess. That's for sure.
Right. It takes time to figure all those details out, right? Yeah, you got to have that conversation. Well, that brings us to the next scenario, Mark. So it says, after once using the 1031 exchange, we purchased a rental home. After renting it for years, we thought of moving into it. How many years does it take to revert back to personal property to avoid the capital gains?
Okay, so I'm glad you were able. Those that do much in the real estate world know what a 1031 exchange is. You can go from one property. Now, there is a very specific time frame that you're able to do this. You want to know the rules on that, but then you can get us into that new property and not be faced with those capital gains. Now, if you want to move back into it, like Casey just asked me, there's a 2-year window. You need to be in that property for 2 more years to not be looking at capital gains again. So again, planning this is important. We were so close last year, everyone that's listening today, of the capital gains rate doubling. Long term would have gone from 15 to 30%, and short term would have gone from 20 to 40. That's why we're big in wanting everyone to talk with somebody that will help them with taxes now, and not just tell you to go talk to your CPA or your, tax preparer. We believe that needs to be incorporated in any good plan, is understanding what taxes might be doing in the future and have a very solid plan for that moving forward. So that's something we all need to think a lot about, and hopefully you're getting some good direction from somebody that's good in tax planning.
Hitting retirement scenarios, opportunity for you during the course of this show to get some help for yourself. If you have not started planning or you're in the middle of something, need that second opinion, the appointments we make available for our radio listeners are complimentary. If you've saved $250,000 or more towards your retirement, get on in here, grab one of these complimentary appointments, 866-668-3625. Again, if you haven't started or maybe you're in the middle of something, need that second opinion, grab one of the appointments, 866-668-3625. Put the expertise of Elevated Financial Management to work for you. Okay? Opportunity, 866-668-3625. Grab one. All right, Casey, next one. IRA is being willed to me. If I inherit it before age 59 and a half, can I have it sent directly to my own IRA? What are the tax implications?
Well, the rules have changed regarding inherited IRAs in the last few years, starting with the Secure Act of 2020. And so a number of things have changed, and we get a lot of questions surrounding that. And there's still a lot of folks that actually don't understand the new rules and kind of the detriment that some of those things have brought. So just as a quick recap, Secure Act of 2020 eliminated what was called the stretch IRA. So if you inherit an IRA, you used to be able to take that entire value and potentially stretch that over your lifetime and take out a little bit each year for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever that time frame was. You could stretch that money out. Now with the Secure Act of 2020 in place, and we're a few years into the Secure Act of 2020, but now with that in place, the IRS says that you've got 10 years to get that money out of the inherited account. And so what that means is you could take all of it in year one, you could take 10% each year for 10 years, or you could take all of it in year 10. They don't care, but you got to have the money out. And the reason is because they want you to pay taxes on those dollars, right? They were never taxed on the previous owner's life, but they want them to be taxed now. Now, the law, the Secure Act, the different regulations that are there, none of that changes if you inherit it before the age of 59 and a half. That doesn't create an exception for you. That doesn't give you some special circumstance. You still have this 10 years to deal with it. And you could not roll that into your own IRA. That's not something that you would be available to do. You've got to start taking the money out of that account, and the money has to go into an inherited IRA or a beneficiary IRA to make sure that that's kept separate. The tax implications of that are depending on what your tax brackets are. So that's where you're going to end up paying taxes on those dollars as if they were income, which is essentially what would have happened had the original owner kept it and started taking money out. They would have had to pay taxes at their tax brackets. In this circumstance, you're just paying them at your tax brackets, which potentially may be the same or different than the original owner. Now, there are a few exceptions to those rules, right?
Spouses.
Spouses are an exception, and beneficiaries that are within 10 years age-wise of the deceased. That is also an exception among minor children and other things like that too. Now, we're not going to get into each one of those. That's, again, where you got to have a conversation with somebody that can understand your situation, your circumstances, because we talk about this all the time. They are unique to you, but that is something where you would want to have a further conversation to figure out what's most appropriate in your circumstance. Now, real quick, Mark, we've got this last scenario here. If I get a loan from my 401k, do I have to include it on my tax return when filing taxes?
Well, the very quick answer to that is no, you do not. But here's what we need to understand. Any money that we borrow from a 401k plan is going to be tax exempt as long as you pay back the loan on time. So there's specific time frame rules that you must adhere to. You must also pay the interest to yourself and not to a bank. So keep that in mind. The interest got to be paid to yourself and not to a bank. Also, if you don't have to claim, as we talked about, you don't claim that loan on your tax return. But let's say you mess up on the rules and you don't pay the money back on time in connection with the loan rate. Well, what's going to happen? Well, a couple of things. What's going to happen is you're going to get a 1099 from your 401k plan administrator, and it's going to be sent to you. And you are then going to have to declare what you took out in the form of that loan as a distribution, and it'll be treated as ordinary income. Okay. Which I have some clients where we don't pay back the 401k loan. We just take the distribution and we pay the tax on it, just as if they took it out. They didn't loan it out, because when we think about it, I don't like loaning out 401k money. That's my money. I put it in there. Now we're paying interest on that. So I just think there's better ways to skin the cat sometimes. So you want to pay it back. If you don't, it's going to be treated as ordinary income. And you also have to worry about if you're prior to 59 and a half in age, you're going to get hit with another 10% penalty. So you need to be really careful about this and deal with someone that can really help you understand the rules, so you don't make a big mistake and cost yourself a lot of extra tax money and income money that you weren't planning on.
All right, gentlemen, we have 10 appointments available. They're complimentary. Casey, walk us through what's going to happen.
Well, if you've saved $250,000 or more, this is specifically for you. We're going to sit down with you, have an easy conversation, no obligation, leave your checkbook at home. We'll talk through the risks that you're currently taking, how you're currently invested, what taxes might look like for you in retirement, and we'll start to map out a way to increase the success of your portfolio, increase the success of your retirement, and ultimately give you a roadmap for retirement, a written financial plan put together by our team of certified financial planners. It's just a conversation. Don't hesitate. Pick up the phone. Give us a call.
Complimentary. Here's the number, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Another edition of Elevate Your Wealth is in the books. For Mark Stimson and Casey Elkins, I'm Morgan Patrick. We're going to see you on the radio next week.
Investment advisory services offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. All rights reserved.